I'll take a roll call.
Okay, we've got Gino Rossetti. Gino, are you here?
Here.
Thanks. We have Eric Vozick.
Here.
We have Michelle Bo.
Here.
We have Rob Levitt.
Yes.
And Bill Marin, Kyle Oberketter, and Cindy Hirschfield are absent.
Great. Have a quorum. First order of business is to approve the minutes for March 1st. Do we have any comments, questions? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Michelle? Gino nodded, so I'll take that as a second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I abstain?
Yeah, you can.
So minutes are approved. Great. First order of business is a public hearing on a special review application submitted by Pete McBride on 143 West Homestead Drive.
Let me switch places here. We do have the applicant here this evening, Pete McBride. And let me share my screen. We're getting better at it. It's a challenge. This is a public hearing on an application submitted by Pete McBride for special review to vary the front yard setback to 4 foot on the construction of a new garage at 143 Homestead Drive in the R3 TN Zone District. The site subject of the application is 143 West Homestead. It contains a small single-family house. It was constructed in the late 1800s. It contains no off-street parking spaces and has significant landscaping, including a pine tree that you can see here in the photo, as well as a rare black locust tree on the site. And the grade of the property is raised above the street grade, and there's a retaining wall separating the street from the property, as you can see in these photos. The process is a special review to vary the front yard setback, and it includes P&Z making a recommendation to the town council with public hearings at both the P&Z and council levels. It is not a typical hardship variance, as properties in the R3 TN Zone District have more flexibility to vary setbacks than do properties in other zone districts. And once again, the request is to vary the setback to 4 foot for the construction of a proposed garage, as you can see here in the site plan photo. Here's the property line, here's Homestead Drive, and the applicant is proposing to put the garage up to the area of the retaining wall, which is about 4 foot off the property line. In reviewing the application, staff has identified a series of discussion items that are in your staff memo, and the first is compliance with the review standards in the R3 TN Zone District. First off, we'll give you a shot of what the garage looks like. It's in your packet. This is a rendering showing the retaining wall, the proposed garage, and there's proposed to be storage on the second floor of the garage in this area. You can see that as part of the site plan and the floor plans that you have in your packet. The proposed garage is about 480 square foot, and you can see it here. And then it's got storage, as I noted, on the second floor. And so compliance with the review standards, as I identified, there's a unique set of review criteria in the R3 TN Zone District, and you've got these in your packet. They talk about unreasonable hardship. They also talk about exceptional circumstances, as well as consistency with the spirit of the R310 zone district, which are the criteria that can be considered. The applicants in their narrative included discussion about the property having exceptional circumstances in that it doesn't have any off-street parking, and that it has several trees that are either rare or that the town arborist has required be maintained, which includes that pine tree that I pointed out in the photo. And so they've suggested, Pete has suggested that that dictates the location of the garage. Staff agrees that there are exceptional circumstances, and the police department as well as Public Works are supportive of the applicant creating the additional parking off-street due to plowing issues as well as on-street parking conflicts that the applicant has had over time. Staff is also supportive of the applicant being able to maintain the 1800s house and make the site work. Staff believes it is consistent with the spirit of the zone district on West Homestead in that there's a series of houses with garage that front onto the street and that are street facing in the close proximity to this property. In terms of other discussion items, compliance with dimensional requirements, the applicants have proposed a height that meets the requirements and that's lower than the main house, as well as under the 24-foot height limit for accessory structures in R310, and that it's creating off-street parking, which will bring the property more into conformance with the parking requirements of the zone district, and that it doesn't have any off-street parking now. In terms of the other conditions that we have, the materials are required to meet the wildfire mitigation requirements, and the garage is proposed to meet the sustainable building requirements. That's also a condition. In terms of the referral comments that we've received, the fire district has indicated that they don't have any issues. The police department has indicated that they support the applicant being able to provide off-street parking, since the site doesn't have off-street parking. And the town engineer has reviewed the application and required that the applicant provide a turning radius diagram. And so the applicant did provide a turning radius diagram that you have in your packet. And the town engineer was accepting of that turning radius. So the referral agencies were supportive of the application. And so town staff would recommend taking applicant comments this evening, taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and providing discussion. And then ultimately, if you're comfortable, you could make a recommendation to the town council. Pete, do you have some comments for P&Z, and you want to show some photos here?
Well, I didn't find the photos. I was going to show you some photos of other garages at the front street. But basically, the other issue is that wall faces north, so winter, it's just like where all the snow gets piled up. And so I really have little space to put my vehicle. And just trying to figure out a way to do it in a kind of the vernacular, the historic style, and save as much yard and anything. And my yard goes right back to this hillside. My house sits right above us here, and there just really isn't. If I pushed it back, it would hit the house or the existing shed. So, and then there's this black locust tree right there on the right. There's only 4 of them by Basalt, as I was told by the arborist, and then the one on the left is actually a pine tree, but that one's one of the largest. So I'm going to try to protect those. And doesn't give us many other options to move it. So that was the idea, and keep it a 1-car garage, make it sort of in style of this old small miners Victorian. Keeping it in the style of homestead. That's about it. Well, you can ask any questions.
Thanks, Pete. Instead of going around, I'll just, any councilor questions?
Is there a sidewalk by the rock wall?
No.
Okay. Is it pulling out into across the sidewalk? Would worried me. Just questions, not comments?
Questions right now, yeah.
Okay, that was it.
Questions, Gino?
No, I'm not sure I can hear James all that well, but no, I don't think so.
Okay.
No questions.
I don't have any questions either. Seeing as this is a public hearing, we'll open up for public comments at 6:15. James, do you want to give the instructions, or?
Yes, absolutely. So the instructions for people wanting to call in or Zoom in are included in the P&Z packet on the town's website for the March 15th meeting. There is a link to join the webinar that is on the second page of the packet, which is on basalt.net at the Agenda Center. Or you can also call in, and the call-in number is 669-900-6833, and the webinar ID is 870-3112-9596. Once again, the call-in number is 669-900-6833, and the webinar ID is 870-3112-9596. So we want to wait a minute or two here, see what we get.
No one here in the building, we can wait a minute.
James, no letters for, against?
No.
I had two neighbor letters for it that were in the Dropbox folder somewhere, which I can't seem to pull up. And the architect is also a neighbor. And they seem supportive. They'll be happy to get my vehicles off the street.
No one on Zoom, any emails or texts?
No emails or text.
All right, we can close the public comments at 6:17 and leave it up for commissioner comments. Comments?
No, I really don't.
I drove by on the way here, and it's an eclectic neighborhood, and this garage seems to fit right in with what's going on there.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that being an issue. Hope we take on, saw in the packet that you have everything intended to protect those trees, but there's gonna be a lot of excavation to put a garage in at street level, and so whatever we can do to protect them, take a little extra caution, because I'm sure there's roots that are going where you're gonna be digging, so.
Yeah.
It's a shame to lose them, because they're beautiful trees, and I know you're trying to work around them as well. And we had no other letters, so, no, I think it's something that probably benefits the neighborhood.
Excuse me, going in front of you. I just am a little curious about the snowplow and the snowplow moving your little 4 feet from the curb. And has anyone given any thought or about it? Would there be a problem with the people doing snow plowing? And then after they've done the snow plowing, is there any problem for getting in and out of the garage?
Sure. The reason that there's not really an issue with the snow plowing is because you have that rock retaining wall that's going along the rest of the property. So it kind of protects basically where the snow plow can go. So it can't go any closer because it'll hit the retaining wall. So that protects the garage area.
Okay, as long as it's thought through. Thank you.
Michelle, any comments?
I think it fits the character of the neighborhood. It's the right size and all of the things everybody already said. I'd just be super excited if it included an ADU that was deed restricted, but that's not on you. I just, that's a general comment, but looks good.
I would be happy to explore it. Frank, record, I'd be happy to explore making a house deed restricted for future generations down the road if I, disappeared.
Interesting.
Stick around for the rest of the meeting.
There is a code amendment next that we're talking about that, so.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think my house may be, if not one of, is the oldest house in the town of Basalt. And I rebuilt it myself, and it probably still needs some love. I don't want to see what happened to the other house. And we don't have I don't think we've thought through the historic nature of how to protect these as historic board yet, but I feel like right now I'd be the best historic voice for that house.
Yay.
great.
You're
I'm
excited that you're saving.
the fifth owner, which is pretty cool. And Henry, who's my sold to me, he raised his family there. He's the fourth, so he walks over I'm missing, but it's kind of cool. He walks over and he's like, "Have you seen this shot?" He hands me the shot of like, "Here's 1906." They're sitting on the porch.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. No additional comments, just agree with Rob, if, whatever precautions on those trees would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll take any advice too, how to, because I'm a total tree lover, so
Yeah.
here, I know it's gonna be a little tricky. So if there's any really good arborists or people that, in addition to the towns.
He's pretty top notch though.
Top notch,
Yeah.
great.
No more comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. My colleague said I think really fits. And I think that would encourage more people to make sure that it happens. So I would move to accept the project as it is.
Second?
Rob, second, James.
Okay,
Do you want a roll call or just a vote?
let's do a roll call.
Okay.
We've got Gino.
Gino, how do you vote?
Like,
Yes. We have Eric.
Yes.
We have Michelle.
Yes.
And we have Rob.
Yes.
The
Motion
carries.
passes 4-0.
Good luck, Pete.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for serving.
Cool.
I used to sit in that seat,
That was you?
as a councilman years ago. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I mean, the service especially. That's the hard part. What, you'll just give me ideas on the next steps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for the sandwich.
Yeah.
Good night.
Next item is then a public hearing on the code amendments related to miscellaneous affordable housing topics. We will take a staff presentation.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Be confused.
Yeah.
This is a public hearing to consider code amendments related to miscellaneous affordable topics that you have in your packet. Gino, can you hear me okay? Is that better?
Can you hear James?
ready?
Can you hear James?
Can you hear me okay?
Now I can, but I didn't hear you before.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, I'll continue to speak up here, I apologize. Background is that the affordable housing topics reflected in the code amendments are topics that the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, was working on, and additionally, the P&Z had a work session in February on this topic, and the topics include the following. They include removal of the exemption from the affordable housing mitigation requirements to do a 1.5% real estate transfer assessment. It also includes changing the off-street parking requirements for affordable housing to be consistent with the R4MD parking requirements. And it also includes establishing a voluntary deed restriction process for deed restricting free market units to deed restricted affordable housing. And looking at the individual topics, the removal of the option to reduce the affordable housing mitigation requirements by 10% for dedicating a 1.5% RETA. BAC had expressed support for such a code amendment, and P&Z at the work session also initially supported the concept for such an amendment. So the language that you have in your packet includes removing that exemption in the first section of the language that's proposed. There's also the amendment related to the off-street parking requirements to make it the R4MD parking requirements for affordable housing, which essentially reduces the parking requirement for 3-bedroom units that would be affordable housing from 3 parking spaces to 2 parking spaces. And the intent would be to try to remove the barriers to getting some 3-bedroom units in the affordable housing inventory. The other intent behind it is to reduce parking, which could act as a disincentive for using automobiles. Staff had done a case study with Roaring Fork Apartments for BAC, as they are an affordable housing project that actually provides stickers or passes for their tenants. So we were able to understand how many cars they actually have kind of registered for that project. And it lined up well with the R4MD parking numbers and requirements. The P&Z at the work session generally provided support for the idea of reducing parking for affordable housing under the idea that it would act as a disincentive for automobiles. But P&Z wanted to see what's happening elsewhere and wanted more examples of what was happening. So staff went back and did some research. And the research that staff did, we looked into the Truscott affordable housing that was cited as part of the P&Z work session. And that project in Aspen actually requires one parking space for each individual unit, regardless of how big the unit is or how many bedrooms the unit has. And, you know, we talked to representatives from the Aspen-Picken County Housing Authority about that project, and they indicated that they are having issues with parking. But it was way under the parking requirements that we're proposing. It was one space per unit. And we're proposing one space per one bedroom, 2 spaces for 2-bedroom units, and then 2 spaces for 3-bedroom unit. We also looked at other jurisdictions out there in terms of what they require for multifamily housing. And we've got a chart in your packet, but it's also up here on the screen. You know, there's kind of a mixed bag here of the different communities that are out there. Staff talked to planners from the jurisdictions that had the least restrictive parking requirements, and that was Aspen and Telluride, which only require 1 space per multifamily unit regardless of the size. And in talking to them, the planners that we talked to from those 2 communities said it is acting as a parking disincentive to have that low of a parking ratio, but they indicated that it actually works better when you have a lot of on-street parking in the vicinity. So, you know, staff is supportive of not going that far and kind of doing more of a experimental scenario where we look at the R4MD and you know, see what we can do in terms of getting more 3-bedroom units by reducing the 3-bedroom parking requirements. And if that works, we can look at maybe more of a parking disincentive, but kind of taking steps towards, you know, reducing in the future. So staff would recommend the language that we have in the draft code language that's in your packet. It is a code amendment, so P&Z would be making a recommendation to the town council. So staff would suggest taking public comments if we have any this evening, because it is a public hearing, and then providing commission discussion. Ultimately, if you're comfortable with code language or want to adjust the code language, you could make recommendations to staff to look at adjustments. Or if you're comfortable, you can make a recommendation to the council. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and take questions that P&Z might have.
Gino, any questions?
Yeah, I do. I think this is an opportunity that we might miss on if I didn't bring this up. But almost a year ago, we found out about a very unfortunate housing project that went up on Elk Run. And we were told that this really isn't our baby because it was a separate piece of property that was in Eagle County's approval process. And there was a lot of feedback from a lot of our neighbors that this is just really unfortunate that this happened. It's a big, ugly brute, and there's no way to cover it up with trees or vines or anything. And I thought that, well, I guess I'll ask one question of you. Are there other properties that you might know of in our catchment that we are not in any control over, have no say in the design and the process of it? And if the answer is no, then it doesn't matter what I say about the second. But the second one is, if you say yes, what teeth can we put into it, or what can we say in there that even though it is XYZ's domain, the P and Z has the right to review the design and the intent of the design. I know this is slippery water, and I'm not sure that my colleagues agree with me, but I live with that thing every day near me, and I hear the comments that many of the neighbors look right in the eye and say, well, you should have warned us, or you should have done this. They think that is our failure to make that right. And I'm just wondering if this document that we're trying to work with Bach and everybody else, is there any way we can write something, some language, something that would help not have this happen again?
Well, the first question, I think the answer is yes, there are other properties in Eagle County that are outside of the town of Basalt limits, but are inside the town's urban growth boundary that, you know, could develop with another single-family house, you know, that the town P&Z wouldn't be able to provide referral comments on. Typically, the town gets the ability to provide referral comments if a property in Eagle County is proposing some sort of development review application. Like, you know, if they were proposing to rezone a property to increase the development rights that are allowed, then the town in the urban growth boundary of the town's 3-mile planning area has an ability to provide referral comments on, like, you know, the Fields development application or any other kind of more intense development application. But there are other properties that could build single-family houses that the town likely would do a referral on. You know, in terms of your second question about whether we could put something in the code that requires the town P&Z to review such an application, you know, town staff would probably need to confer with the town attorney on, you know, that possibility. And we can certainly talk to the town attorney about that. You know, I don't know that in the code language that you have open tonight and that you're looking at and that has been noticed, those code sections probably wouldn't be the right place to put such a, you know, language.
Then my third question is really addressed back to us and you, Chair. Am I a lone wolf on this and overstating it, or
No.
is it not something worth our while, or can you offer anything?
You're absolutely correct, but this is probably not the right discussion for that.
Because of what we're doing and
Well, yeah, the discussion tonight, parking, redos.
I don't think they're out of line. I don't think it's inappropriate. I just think it's a different discussion item. I think the ones there, the bigger developments, you know, they're all, you know, again, the commissioner comments later about some of the stuff out there.
I guess you're right, Rob, and I deliberated whether or not I should even open my mouth. Because
No.
No, I think we should keep it in the
it is
conversation.
offensive to me.
I think that kind of impact that we can have, that should be part of all of our conversations.
Okay, would I just shove this off and say that there is a possibility in the future that we formulate some kind of opinion?
I think they said they can follow up with the staff attorney and we can follow up with it.
Yeah, we'll follow up with the staff attorney. You know, it's tricky because that property is not in the town's jurisdiction, so the code usually applies to the town's jurisdiction. But I'm happy to talk to the town attorney about it.
Okay. Thank you for listening.
Anytime?
You want to have the kind of relationship with Eagle County, the approving board, that we can say, hey, let's talk, and then have the dialogue instead of the way that went through, we didn't have to say it.
Every other property.
That's an idea.
Michelle, questions?
I don't have questions, I have comments for when we get to that part.
Rob?
Several questions and comments. I mean, I think that, given the choice, that I'm gonna err on the side of too much parking versus not enough parking, right? And when you get people putting in the street, you're affecting the neighbors, the neighborhood, and I don't think it's what you want to impose on people. But more specifically, James, talking about switching to the RM4?
R4 and D.
R4, okay.
Yeah.
I understand you want to encourage bigger units, 3-bedroom units, but how does that change the studio 1 and 2-bedroom units?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It's really
It's just a
affecting,
requirement for 3 bedrooms.
yeah, it's really affecting the 3-bedroom.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that. You know, I look at the Roaring Fork Apartments, and it is pretty uniquely situated near mass transit. So I have a really hard time using that as a comparison for any other affordable or any other kind of housing development, because it's just not right there. So I sort of discount those numbers and look much more at what everybody else has done. And so I'm less in line personally with Telluride and Aspen, and more so with places that are just more rigid. We want to go through the RETA. I think that's fairly straightforward.
Or we can, I mean, I have
We're
a
going to
question.
separate these, and we can vote on these individually, or is this a package deal?
Well, let's maybe stick questions,
Questions.
and then after we have the public hearing, each individually, one.
Would it be easier for you, because I have a question about parking too. Parking for now, and then
I
we'll
also
go back
have
to Rita.
Question
Is that good?
about the self-imposed.
Yeah, Rob,
Why don't we-
why don't you ask your questions,
Oh,
and Eric, you
okay.
ask your questions.
I just wasn't sure what's
So-
the easiest.
What's the benefit to a self-imposed deed restriction?
There really isn't much benefit for the property owner. There could be a small property tax benefit because your value is different if you have a deed restriction on it. So far, we haven't seen enough value difference for somebody to come in and do a voluntary deed restriction on their property and get the benefit out of, reduced property tax.
Does it change who you would rent to?
It doesn't change who you would rent to, no.
It would force you to possibly rent to someone that's a full-time resident?
Yeah, you're right. It would,
Okay.
if you place the deed restriction on your
And
property.
otherwise, if you were just in the free market, can you still do that? I mean,
You could voluntarily do that. Today, you could voluntarily deed your free market unit if you wanted to. But we don't have a process set forth in the town code, and Bach thought it would be beneficial to establish that process so that if somebody came in, asking to do it, staff wouldn't fumble around and say, well, we're not sure, but we think you can do it. We can point to a process in the town code and say, yes, we have process, it's administrative, it's easy. We think it's great that you're trying to deed restrict your free market unit and create a affordable housing unit out of it. Here, we can work with it.
I think it's also related to sort of first step of the Bail in Deed program, where they go out and find things that the owners aren't gonna redevelop or refurbish, and they're willing to deed restrict it so that they can pass it on and get rid of it with some tax benefits. This isn't that program fully fleshed out, but it's sort of like the first step of that.
okay.
I mean, it could allow for that, if the town thought that they wanted to subsidize the buy-down deed restrictions on units, this would be the process that you would.
Makes sense. Otherwise, because it's nothing that stops people from renting out their house to below market value of locals. But, that helps, okay. That's it, sir.
Okay. I know you followed up on a couple of the other jurisdictions with parking. Did you look into Glenwood? I'm just intrigued to how this works, that it's consistent, just one parking space, one guest unit for every 5 units, how that works. It to me is something very different.
It is different. I did not talk to planners from Glenwood. I talked to planners from Aspen, Telluride, Dillon, and Estes Park. Staff could do some more research and talk to Glenwood. It is different than everybody else.
Just intrigued how it kind of works for them and what that looks like. I'm the opposite of Rob. Anytime we can mitigate and reduce parking, I agree with the idea that it should then impose on the neighbors and just overflowing into the streets. I agree with that.
Is Glenwood the newest of all those programs up there? I think it is. I think it's
Yes,
just,
currently looking to change theirs and go to more restrictive.
I think Glenwood just adopted an affordable housing program not that long ago. So, may or may not be proven to be.
True.
So, I would think these numbers are negotiable with the developer, right?
Yeah.
But if you codify some lower, you're not gonna negotiate back up. So,
And it sounds like the only thing we're talking about reducing right now is for the 3-bedroom parts.
Yeah. The idea is to be able to
Families
try
that
to
might
get
live 2
larger
cars.
units in our affordable housing inventory, because we don't have very many.
I thought we can really negotiate these on a case-by-case basis. We're not gonna have that many applicants that come through. So personally, I would keep them more restrictive and then be able to negotiate down as we saw fit, instead of codifying less restrictive and then being stuck with it.
Should we open the public comment?
Oh.
Yes,
questions? Great, so let's open for public 43. James is gonna reread the instructions again.
We'll reread them here.
Thank you.
So for anybody that is looking to attend the meeting via Zoom or via phone, you can find the instructions on the town's website at basalt.net, and it would be under the Agenda Center for the P&Z meeting March 15th. It'll be the second page of the packet, and there's a Zoom link on the second page of the packet for March 15th, and so you can click on that. Or if you would like to make comments by phone, the phone number is 669-900-6833, and the webinar ID is 870-3112-9596. Once again, by phone, if you'd like to make comments, the phone number is 669-900-6833, and the webinar ID is 870-3112-9596.
Thank you, James. No one here live. Doesn't look like we have anybody on Zoom. Do we have any emails or texts?
No.
All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing then at 6:45, and now we'll open up for commissioner comments. Rob?
I'm a little confused trying to look at the amendment proposed by staff, and it's basically one parking spot per bedroom. But it looks like we require more than that now, so we're lowering the requirements for studios, one bedrooms and two bedrooms. All in the idea of generating more three-bedroom units. So that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if we want to lower it for three-bedroom units, I could consider that, but I don't.
I apologize. I misspoke. For one-bedroom units, we are actually going down from 1.5 spaces to 1. For two-bedroom, we're still the same, and for three-bedroom, we're going down from 2.5 to 3. I'm sorry, 2.5 to 2. So I apologize.
Okay, I mean, I'm just,
Yep.
you look across the board, most places require 1.5
Or 1.25.
or 1 1/4. So I don't see why we would go down to 1. That's the proposed amendment by staff.
For affordable housing only.
Housing, okay, so I would change that. And if we want to encourage three-bedroom units, then change the parking lines for three-bedroom units, but I wouldn't agree
Touch the
to
bedroom.
use them on the small units. Everything else is proposed seems fairly straightforward.
Would you be opposed to going down to 1.25, which seems to be Carbondale, Aspen? I'm just asking.
I know, you're negotiating, no, because if developers to come in with a fantastic proposal and offer that, then sure, we could do that, but I'm not gonna give it to them straight off the bat.
Is the way the current requirements are written, Jim, do we have the flexibility if we want to reduce? Or is it kind of required and says this is what they have to do?
There is a process, so through the PUD process, you could reduce the amount of parking. There is also a special review process where you could do a mixed-use parking model if you had a mixed-use building and reduce it with the idea that, you know, you'd have shared parking for the commercial and the residential use at different times of day. So there's that option that's out there for mixed use.
Is that clear? Is that something, could we add a sentence that says, we wish to reduce parking and this is how it would happen? Would you be amendable?
But we don't make that decision, that's a council decision, right?
That's a council
That's a
decision,
council
yeah. You make a recommendation on those reviews, yeah.
I'm just trying to find a middle ground there. And I also know that Kyle, who's not here, I know he feels pretty strongly about the parking stuff. And so it's another question I was brought to all of us. Do we want to table this so he can, at his comments, and move on to others, or do we just want to move forward? I can't speak for him, I just know in past meetings he's brought this has been an issue he's interested in.
I'm not in a rush to get it through.
Do we have time?
What I might suggest is if you're okay with the other amendments, but parking, you might drop the parking out and make recommendations on the other ones, so that we don't run into problems with maybe the affordable housing exemption piece, if you're comfortable with doing that.
We'll let our brains, if there are comments.
Yeah, I'm personally okay with it, but I agree, insertion or change or modification. But it's, I'm good, and I appreciate all the work you went into it.
Rob, I'm sorry, what was your suggestion? What was your suggestion, keep it at 1.5 for the one bedrooms?
Yes. I mean, if you're trying to encourage 3-bedroom units, then maybe that's the one that you drop.
It would feel easier to say yes to that if there was a caveat about on-street parking being available as well.
But it's such a case by case to me.
It really
Right,
is.
if you're near transport, mass transport, then maybe it's less. If you're out, if you're not, then maybe you're less flexible. If there's in a residential neighborhood, so it's just hard to codify that now.
And you know what I think it's coming around to is that I bet you that's why Glenwood has that guest parking requirement per unit, so that they have some overflow and they have some guest parking if they don't have on-street parking. Because where I live is not affordable housing, although, whatever, but we're constantly battling the issue of being 3-bedroom units and 2 parking spots, and the guest parking being a challenge. But it's better and better all the time, but it's an issue. I really support the lowering it for the 3 bedrooms for certain. I do wish there was a way to speak to the proximity maybe of being near a RAFTA bus stop, because that would certainly make some element of it a little more simplistic to say yes to reducing it more. But I guess I won't speak to Kyle's comments in the past, but I know he does have strong feelings about reducing the parking.
In pro or con?
I think he's for reducing, finding other ways of being creative.
Yes.
So I don't know if he'd be opposed to this idea of showing utility per se, but I know it seems like he's more for finding parking reduction.
Yeah, I think parking reduction is super important, but here's the reality that people own cars. And there's a difference between trip reduction and parking reduction. And we do need to figure out how to make it so we can get more 3 bedrooms. And so maybe this is a good first baby step to just address the 3-bedroom unit first. I would feel free to, I would feel comfortable to make a motion in that direction.
James, how hard is it to revisit this? If we approve tonight, to come back if Kyle, say, has objections and wants to revisit this?
That would depend on if whether P and Z as a whole wanted to revisit it.
I think if you take a straw vote now, even if he was here,
True.
I'm not sure that it would change the outcome.
Fair.
Maybe, but maybe not.
Is there a way that we could, I first read this, the one after 4 or more bedrooms, there being additional requirements for multiple family residential. Is there another way that you could just simply say, every project would have a X percentage, and if it's 0.25 units, parking per, because what it's affecting then is the developer, not the people that are coming into it. So if he's got 100 units, asking for additional parking is very reasonable. Is that addressed meant to be addressed in the additional?
Let me see if I can, please clarify your question. Are you asking about whether there's a certain trigger in terms of the number of units where it might bump up, the parking requirements? That's not currently built in. There's just a parking requirement per the number of bedrooms in a unit. So there's not a trigger point where it bumps up.
Not sure I really understood that. Is there nothing in here for visitors parking as a requirement?
Is there nothing that requires reserved parking? Is that?
Yeah, visitors or guests or something, whatever.
There is a requirement for guest parking for the free market component of a development over 6 units. So it's 0.25 spaces for starting at 6 units. Point 0.25 spaces per unit for multifamily over 6 units.
For some reason, I just didn't see anything in there for visitor parking.
So that's the town code's requirement for guest parking, and that applies.
Okay.
So we're in agreement on the RETA and on the voluntary deed restrictions, right? We could pass that and we could table the parking, or we could be in agreement to encourage 3-bedroom units and leave everything else the same.
Sure.
Mhm.
That sounds like where we are. So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll
That-
second.
I have a
Which one is it? The whole, you want to recommend approval of all the code amendments with the exception of changing the parking, except for the change.
The parking
of the 3.
reduction only for a 3-bedroom unit.
I would still like to hear back about what's going on in Glenwood personally, but
Now, if we want to table, we can discuss this more further too.
it probably won't affect how I'm gonna vote.
Well, there's a motion out there then.
There's a motion from Rob. Do we have a second to approve the staff recommendations with the modifications in the parking?
Sure.
Gino seconds. All in favor?
And we're clear, just so we don't,
Mhm.
we're clear, Gino, that the parking modification is only for 3-bedroom units.
So it would take the parking requirement for 3-bedroom units down to 2 spaces for a 3-bedroom unit, but otherwise, all the parking requirements stay the same.
Do you want a roll call or all in favor?
Let's do roll call. We have Gino,
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
we have Michelle,
Yes.
we have Eric,
Yes.
and we have Rob.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Last item on the agenda then are comments, staff updates.
So for staff updates, in April, you will likely be seeing the Parcel 5 Cypress Meadows application. There is also an application for another one of the vacant lots in the Broughton subdivision, like the one you saw at the last meeting, for a single-family house site plan review. Other topics include that on March 29th, there will be a meet and greet at 5 o'clock at the Basalt Library, and I'll send you an email on this, but it is to hear presentations from the 4 planning director candidates, and so they'll be making a presentation, and you'll be able to provide feedback on comment cards. And all the town boards will be invited.
Is it down to 4 already, or that will be by then?
We're working it down to 4 right now. And so that's on March 29th. And
Still planning on doing interviews the 30th?
we still plan on doing interviews the 30th, and so there'll be an email about that going out.
You got my times, I sent you.
Yeah, it'll
If
probably go a little bit beyond your time, so, you'll have to
Everyone's-
make a
yeah,
decision
we'll talk.
whether you can make it or not.
Yeah.
And then other topics, the Basalt River Park Phase 2 contractor is out to bid to do the work on Phase 2 of the park, and getting bids back in the end of March here, with the hope that we would start the installation of landscaping early in the spring, once we can. And we also have architects working on the design of the band shell over there, as well as the restroom and bus station facilities. So they're mid-process there in designing both of those aspects of it.
Will that be completed in 22?
Yes, it should be completed, unless we go out to bid and it's just ridiculous, but we expect it to be completed in 2022. And then other projects that we have going on through the Basalt Forward 2030. The council is having discussions on the affordable housing funds and how to spend those. They've been having executive sessions about specific property negotiations or deed buy downs. So they're still working through that process. On the solar project that's part of the Basalt Forward 2030, we've got McKinstry, who is the consultant that was selected by the town. They've got their team coming up tomorrow, actually, and they're going to be touring the different sites, including Basalt High School, the elementary and middle school, and some of the town parks to look at potential for a solar project in those locations. So they're kind of kicking that off. And then the other one is the Midland Avenue Streetscape. The designers that were selected from the RFP is Connect One, and they're partnering with Sopris Engineering and Cushing Terrell. And the contractor that was selected to do kind of the estimating was Stutzman Gerbaz. And so they're just in the initial phases of kind of working through how everything's going to work in that project. There's going to be a lot of public outreach in terms of design, and kind of working through that piece.
I thought you were gonna say public outrage.
Well,
That's gonna come too.
at some point that might come along, unfortunately, but
Yeah, it is.
it's a big project. The other item out there is the BCC application. They're getting close to submitting an application on that for the final plan review that will come in for P&Z's review.
This spring, you think?
It'll be this spring, yeah.
Anything on our tree farm?
Tree farm is, according to the papers, all the lots have been sold. Nothing's popped out of the ground.
Don't they owe us $1 million, $800,000 or something?
When they pull a certain permit, so I'd have to look up what that trigger is, but yeah, there's a requirement that they have to pay towards the underpass is what it was for.
That one.
That
Yeah,
one.
the Willets underpass.
Is that a bond?
No, it wasn't a bond. The town put in money, RAFTA put in money, and, basically covered the tree farm's portion of that improvement, and they're supposed to reimburse.
Does that money come to the town or get split?
The money comes to the town, yeah. And then other county topics, the Fields application that was scheduled for public hearing before the Regional Planning Commission on Thursday got continued to and tabled to April 7th. So they're not hearing it this week. So staff plans on attending that meeting whenever it happens and, letting them know what P and Z's comments were on the fields. And we might coordinate to see if other P and Z members want to attend as well, but we've got.
We make sure it's
time.
brought up at the next meeting before that.
Yeah.
Jen, do you know who is heading the search for replacement of Susan? And is there a timetable?
Yeah, there's a timetable. We have a headhunter company that's out there that has collected applicants. They're out of Colorado Springs. And we had 11 candidates, and we're narrowing it down to 4 candidates. And then there'll be a meet and greet on March 29th at 5 o'clock. And I'll send you an email about this, where you can meet the planning director candidates, and they'll make a presentation, and you can provide comments on that. And so, the timeline is to interview them on March 30th. And so, could potentially have a candidate get an offer shortly after that.
Thank you.
Will we see the resumes by email before the 29th?
I'll have to ask if we can give out resumes. I'm not sure can, but.
And so we don't meet on the 29th?
Yeah,
Usually,
you won't have a
that'll be a
meeting on the
third in the
20th.
month.
Because we have that meet and greet
Okay.
in its place.
Random fifth Tuesday.
Fifth Tuesday, yeah. So I think
Um,
that's all staff had.
On a follow-up, I've talked to Rob about this. Is there any new, are we trying to bring in a alternate, so in case of meetings like this, we make sure we always have a quorum?
We haven't advertised for an alternate at this point. If P&D thinks we need to advertise, we're kind of working on trying to get some of our other boards up to decent numbers. We've got, some low numbers on BOC and BPAC at the moment, so we're really kind of focusing on that.
I feel like we should have an alternate, right?
Nice like this, it's nice to have that extra person and just have another voice.
Yeah.
It's important to fill all the committees, but it seems like we should have that person. It seems like every time we alternate, they end up stepping in, so.
We can advertise.
I want to follow up what Gino brought up before, the tree farm and the fields, and, the projects we always get to comment on, but it definitely doesn't feel like we're a step or in any kind of agreement with what the Regional Planning Commission does. And I know we've done outreach and we've talked, and they shouldn't necessarily go along with everything we say, but it definitely seems these projects, these homes impact our community and our town a lot, and just to continue that follow-up would be important.
Okay.
If not the bigger step of seeing what the town attorney thinks about in additional review opportunities.
I'll check in with the town attorney, and I don't think it's necessarily that you're a step with the Regional Planning Mission. If you remember,
They voted against tree farm.
they had different recommendations than what was finally approved, so. But Stefan talked to the town attorney about what would be done in the town code.
Sure.
Related to review.
Yeah, just reading the stuff in the paper this week's been turning my stomach a little bit.
Maybe
I
since,
think whoever brought that up should know also. When I signed on again for my third term with Susan, I only wanted to do it for 1 year, which would take us up into the summer. So you ought to be thinking about someone that's going to replace me. And my whole reason, I love it and love you guys to work with, but I can't hear anymore. And it's going down and down, and so I'm missing probably 70% of the conversation, and I don't think that's appropriate at all.
Sorry to hear that about your hearing.
I'm almost not.
that's amazing.
Yeah. But thank, that fits then with the alternate.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get an advertisement.
Although they may have tougher shoes to fill than the realized.
True, but I don't think you can advertise like that.
That's a good point.
Tough shoes to fill. Any other comments, questions?
Not
Take
right
a
now.
motion to adjourn then. First from Gino, do we have a second? Second from Rob, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good meeting.